Hi, my name is Matthew Wook, and this is my Accounting Information Systems Office project for 2107 AFE. Uh, so I decided to use the sample data, which I've highlighted in my Excel workbook. Um, just I'll tab out of this so I can get to it. Uh, and I've used the first few lines of basically 24-month gatherings of sofas and beds, and I've used the actual sales and predicted sales. I haven't used the country or state or province. I didn't find that useful. Uh, and then obviously I don't need to be specific. If it's a furniture shop I'm creating a database for, then I figured I didn't need to include the fact that it was furniture in the list. So that's essentially what I've done. Is I've done an office project with the alternative management data where uh, essentially my Excel spreadsheet is for a furniture shop comparing actual sales to budgeted sales on a month-to-month basis for a 4-month period. So what I've done is I've split up the sofa and bed sales. I'll explain why in a bit. But essentially what the layout is it's each month, uh, each detail of actual sales, each detail of predicted sales, a budget, which is just comparing the difference between the two, and then whether or not that budget performance was positive or negative. The reason why I've done that is because uh, it is very hard, especially when you're using a dollar value, to actually see that that is a negative. It just doesn't stick out very well. So I did an if then and because rule that I set up with the budget performance just to show, if this was a positive number, then say positive. If it was a negative number, say negative. Uh, just thought it was good to highlight that. And then what I've also done is I've used color coding for the graphs. Uh, so just from the top, I've used aggregate functions down the bottom to sum total all the values. So obviously in this case for sofas, there was a net positive value of 13 grand, uh, which is pretty good. But that's obviously not profit and loss. That's just the net positive value against what the budgeted prediction was. So that's a positive budget variance of 13 grand, I should actually say. Um, and then I've also done a lookup function as well for monthly sales and also monthly budget performance too. The reason why I've done that is, like take for example the two values that I've got up there, May 2013, even though it was $1,456 in sales, which is pretty good when you even compare, for example, uh, all sales combined. It is pretty good. It is pretty good performance here. However, it was still $254 below the expected budget. So I thought, especially if you're trying to inquire as to monthly sales targets, it was just as important to view what the budget estimate was, or how far or how high or low, how positive or negative you missed the budget variance performance, even from the sales. Uh, and then what I've also done is I've created filters. It was a bit tricky when I first added filters because every time I tried to adjust based on the filter settings, especially when I was doing the sort from largest to smallest here, it was constantly bringing the total value of net values to the top, which I was able to fix by putting a gap in between. But what I found cool about the filters as well was that I could make it so that I could only show negatives monthly performances, which especially in this case for sofas where there were so few months where there was a negative budget performance, it is good to see exactly which months were negative and view exactly why that was the case. So in this case there doesn't seem to be a specific month or period that was you know, that had a particularly negative performance, so we can just chop it down to human error and maybe not actually like a monthly error, which is always a positive. And then obviously I've created a table as well. This one shows the budgeted versus actual sales targets, which I've highlighted here obviously. And the reason why I've used a line graph is it is cool for comparison. I could have used a bar graph in this case, especially if we're going from a month-to-month basis using the data. However, I'll get to what I've done in a bit when I've compared both data with sofas and beds. My second table is almost a mirror image of this, but except it is to do with bed sales. But as you can see, there are a lot more negative net budget sales, budget months I should say, compared to sofa sales. So obviously sofa sales as a budget performance did really well. Beds not so much. And obviously same thing as before where we can look up monthly sales. For example, one thing I didn't do in the last one is I can go September 2012. And it will instantly get me the result there. I can do the same thing here, September 2012. So here was an example of a really positive month where the sales were 1,976 and that was 1,076 over budget. But as you can see, there were a lot more negative net months with sales for beds as there were, and as we can see, it's pretty consistent over the course of the entire 2 years running. And then what I've done in the final graph is I've made a chart comparing both the actual sales of the sofas and beds and the budget performance of the sofas and beds as well, which I've written here. Got the data up mainly just purely and simply for the tables because it was good, especially like if we look from the monthly sofa sales versus bed sales, we can see from a month-to-month basis, which I've used a pie graph for, just so you can get that more specific look at the values per month, to help illustrate exactly which months where sales were obviously high, but also where sales were high for a particular product. And as you can see, even though beds didn't really do well in a budget performance, they did have some very high months in April 2012, May 2013, and September 12, which, I mean, those three together are quite a bit higher than even the top months for sofa sales, like Jan 13, July 13, well, August 13, and September 13. And then what I've also done too is I wanted the budget variances as well, because you have a mix of positives and negatives, and the best way to illustrate that is usually with a line graph, as we can see here. There's net positives and net negatives. And as we can see, as explained before, which anyone could even see in the tables, was that the bed sales were in the net negative for budget performance. So there's a re-estimation problem there, obviously, that needs to be fixed. Now moving to the access. I know we didn't have to do the same concept, but I sort of kept with the same concept, and with my access table I decided to do an inventory, just an inventory inquiry. So I started off with a shop inventory for different types of beds and sofas, gave them a price that the shop would be selling them at, and then obviously how much was in the inventory, and then what the value of that total inventory was. I then created a supplier inventory, added a few more extra lines there just to say they had them in, and then obviously cost price, because obviously you aren't going to have the same price. Like, your supplier's not going to be selling the product to you for the same price that you're selling it to your customer for. So I thought this was a good table to inquire about prices. And then obviously order inquiry list are customers. So where the customer called up and said, hey, I want such and such, can you see if it's available? So in this case, hospital, they want 15 queen singles, kids club wants 20 king bunks. So I thought to start, what we needed was a cost to sales price checklist so that we could examine, especially in the system, that we were not selling the product below cost price, or that the cost price or the sales price was reasonable. So that's where I created my first query, where it compares the product name and the cost price of that, what the supplier's selling it for compared to what we're selling it for. And the reason why I added the inventory type as well, because I thought it would be necessary, especially if we want to narrow it down to beds, we can. And then the second one I created was stock availability check. Now this is a little difficult because I haven't added all the fields yet either, and this is where forms come in too. Stock availability checklist is obviously linked to the order inquiry list, along with the inventory for both the supplier and for the shop. And as we can see here, for example, say I was inquiring to a customer, I can see that MLK Hospital, they want 15 beds. We have 20 in inventory, so we don't need to order any from the supplier before we can call them. I can call them immediately. Here is their number, easy do. Tell them we have the stock and can get on with processing their order for them. Here's where it gets a little tricky, obviously, because Windsor Premium Cinema, they want 30 electronic single lazy boys. We only have 5, so it means I'll have to order 25 from the supplier. And this is where we get to the forms, because obviously there's our customer order inquiry form, but it's a shop inventory edition. So from here I can actually shift over to our electronic lazy boy. Let's say that we ordered 25 and I can add 30 to the total. I can save this down. And then as we can see, it's already edited it in the stock availability checklist to say that we've now got 30 in stock. Can change that easily enough. And then what I've also done is I've created a customer order inquiry form, especially if we wanted to add more customers to the list, or add, just quite simple. So say Ben and, what's going on here? So say for example, oh, that's the ID, that's why I can't draw. So Ben and Jerry's, I don't know why, but I have a hankering for ice cream right now. Ben and Jerry's wanted to order 10 king singles. I don't know why they would want to do that, but yeah, we'll just say for example. Just better make sure I know what I'm calling it. Yeah, so it's called a king single, that's fine. I wanted to order 10. No, wait, we're going to order, let's say 32994578. And they wanted to order 10 king singles. So obviously we enter that, we're good. We close that down, and then obviously when we go back to our stock availability check, maybe because I have to close down the form first. Yes. Then we go back to our stock availability check. There's Ben and Jerry's. They got their order quantity in. We happen to have 50 in our inventory. I can call them and say the stock is available, and we're good to go. And then what I've also done is I've created a stock take report as well. So the stock take report is quite simply just the total in the inventory and the total value of the inventory. I think if I had more time, I'd try to figure out exactly how we can get the inventory calculating with the cost price as well. That way we can kind of estimate what the profit value of the inventory is, as well as obviously the supplier cost of what the inventory is worth. And that's really it. I did struggle with Access a lot. To be perfectly honest, I struggle with the concept. I think Excel was pretty straightforward, but certainly that is one of the things I'm having a hard time with, is the concept and the design of Access. I haven't just gone past the class videos as well, and the presentations. I've watched a lot of other video presentations as well. It is something I need to work on. But yeah, that's my report, and yeah, I'll upload this now, and hopefully it uploads smoothly. Hopefully the video runs smoothly, and thank you for your time.